Ever pick up a book, you know that feeling where the first few lines just grab you, but then life, right? Who has time for a whole novel? That's where we come in. We give you the inside scoop, no speed reading required.
And this time, it gets even better because we're not talking about a book you could just grab off a shelf. This is a sneak peek, a deep dive into a pre-published manuscript. Treachery on the Fells. Romance. Check. Mystery.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All set in England right after World War II.
Seriously cool. Treachery on the Fells. So where do we even start with something like this?
Well, about the author, it's surprisingly detailed. Most times you get a paragraph, but this one intrigued me. Our author, James Statter, he's self-published before, but across all kinds of genres. Kids' books, history, and now this, not your usual path, makes you wonder what led him here.
That's so true. And it's not just any history either. It says his family was directly impacted by World War II. And he even spent some of his childhood in a mining town after the war.
Oh, and get this. He was part of a writing group. But not just any group. They met at Stirling Castle. That's not your average writer's hangout. Feels like he's got this serious passion, but also a real sense of adventure about writing.
Totally. Makes you think, how much of him is in this story? Is Church Farm, where it takes place, a real place? Was there a Peter in his life, this mysterious stranger the book centers around? Okay, I gotta know how it starts.
Right into the story then,
Go.
because it grabs you from page 1. We meet Alice Jenkins. She's our main character. She's inherited this farm, Church Farm. And instantly, you get this sense of possibility, but also a heavy weight on her shoulders.
Church Farm. It's not exactly handed to her in pristine condition, is it?
No, not at all. Statter's really good at creating this atmosphere. There's this line, it stuck with me, about the farmhouse. Something like a single light bulb, no electricity, hanging from this dingy ceiling.
It's bleak. Instantly. This isn't some fairy tale inheritance. And on top of that, it's rural England right after the war. The whole community's probably still hurting, rebuilding.
And the setting, this village, Ambleside, it's almost a character itself. Statter says it's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone. You know what that means, right? Secrets, whispers, everyone's watching.
Perfect ground for a mystery, for sure. And then you've got Peter. He's described as the strong, silent type. That classic, he and Alice, there's a spark right from the start.
But of course, there's more to him than meets the eye. Always is, isn't there? Statter drops these hints, little things about Peter's past. And it's tied to the war, that much we know. So he's got his own baggage, his own secrets. It's that classic fish out of water thing, but with a dark past.
Yeah.
You just want to know, why is he here, of all places?
Adds to the tension with Alice, too, right? She's already dealing with her own past, and now she's falling for this guy who's practically a locked vault. And then we can't forget Elliot Woods. Talk about bad news from the moment he shows up. He thinks he deserves a church farm and makes it very clear Alice isn't welcome.
See, Elliot's really interesting. At first you think, okay, typical villain trying to push Alice out. But then as you read, you wonder, what if there's something more there? Could be history between him and Alice, something from before the book even begins. Statter does that, makes you doubt, is Elliot really bad or just acting out of some warped sense of loyalty or even, dare I say, love?
I'm hooked already, and we're just scratching the surface. There's this scene, it's a flashback. Elliot confronts Alice right when she gets to Church Farm, and you can just feel the tension. It made me wonder, how much can we trust what Alice is telling us? We see everything through her so far, so it's easy to be on her side, but what if there's Elliot's side, and we haven't heard it yet? What if he's not the villain she thinks he is?
That's good. That's Statter's skill, you see. He's making us question who's right, who's wrong. Things are messy, especially in a place like Ambleside, where history is just hanging around like the fog on those fells,
This feels like the perfect spot to take a breath, wouldn't you say? There's just so much to unpack here, but we're not done, not even close. Next time, we'll dive into some of the big moments, the things that really had us on the edge of our seats. Twists we didn't see coming. Trust me, you'll want to be back for that.
So we're back in Ambleside, and let me tell you, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated. Remember we talked about this village, it's still trying to find its footing after the war, and you can just feel that unease, that uncertainty hanging over everything.
Like a wound that hasn't quite healed.
Right.
And everyone's carrying those scars, whether they talk about them or not. It's bound to cause some friction, some tension.
Exactly. And that's where things really start to heat up. It's not just about Alice inheriting the farm anymore.
Things escalate pretty quickly with that arson attempt at Church Farm, don't they? Talk about a shock. I mean, who tries to burn down a farm? And more importantly, why?
Right. You'd think, at first glance, maybe it's Elliot. He's the one who wants Alice gone. But remember how Statter likes to keep us guessing? It might not be that simple. Could be someone else entirely. Someone with their own reasons for wanting to see Church Farm go up in flames.
It's like he's constantly pulling back the curtain just a little, giving us a glimpse of another layer, another possibility. And then, just when Alice thinks things can't get any worse, Peter's attacked. And it's brutal.
It's a real turning point in the story. It's not about property disputes anymore. This is personal. Someone wants to hurt Peter, maybe even silence him for good. And it makes Alice realize, for the first time maybe, that she's caught up in something dangerous, something she doesn't fully understand.
It really makes you wonder, who's behind it? Is it connected to Peter's past, those secrets he's been carrying around? Or is it about Alice, about her shaking things up in Ambleside, making waves?
Don't forget about Joe Turner either. He's been lurking around the edges in the story. At first he seems like just another guy trying to take advantage of Alice's situation. But then Statter gives us these glimpses into what Joe's thinking, what he's feeling.
It's almost like we get inside his head, right? And it's messy in there. I remember that one passage where Joe's watching Alice and he's drawn to her, sure, but there's this sense that he knows she's vulnerable too. Like he could be her protector or something much darker.
It's brilliant, really. Statter takes a character who could have been one-dimensional, predictable, and he turns him into this complicated, unpredictable force in the story.
And just when you think you've got Joe figured out, he does something completely unexpected. But let's go back to Peter for a moment. We've been teasing his past, but now it's time to talk about it, and it's heartbreaking.
Statter reveals it slowly through these flashbacks, these fragmented memories. We learn that Peter's Jewish, that he lost his entire family in the Holocaust. He even fought with the Polish resistance. It's no wonder he's haunted. It's no wonder he's built those walls around himself.
It's a stark reminder, The war might be officially over, but for some people, it never really ended. They're still living with those wounds, those losses.
And it's to Statter's credit that he doesn't shy away from that reality. It would have been easy to just focus on the romance, the mystery, but he weaves in this historical weight, this sense of loss and trauma, and it makes the story so much richer, so much more meaningful.
It's those layers, those complexities that make Treachery on the Fells more than just a good yarn. It's a story about resilience, about finding love and hope in the most unexpected places.
Absolutely. And speaking of unexpected, there are some scenes in this manuscript, moments where Statter just nails it, emotionally speaking, moments that stay with you long after you finish reading.
Oh, totally. Like the funeral scene, for starters, it's the first time we see all the major players together, Alice, Peter, Elliot, Joe, and you can just feel the tension crackling between them.
Statter uses that scene to establish the power dynamics in Ambleside. Everyone's watching everyone else, judging, whispering, and Alice, she's the outsider, the one who doesn't quite belong.
And then there's that moment, that seemingly small moment, when Peter defends Alice at the cafe. It speaks volumes about his character, really. He sees that Alice is being harassed, and he doesn't hesitate. He steps in, uses his strength to protect her.
It's that classic knight in shining armor trope. But somehow, Statter makes it feel fresh, genuine. Maybe it's because we've seen how guarded Peter is, how much pain he's carrying, and yet he's willing to put himself out there for Alice, to be her shield.
And it's a turning point for Alice, too, isn't it? She's strong, she's independent, but she's also vulnerable. And in that moment, she lets herself be protected, lets herself rely on Peter.
It's the start of something real, something deeper between them. And then, of course, there are those stolen moments at Church Farm, those quiet moments of intimacy, of connection that feel so earned, so precious against the backdrop of everything else that's going on.
It's like the world outside could crumble, but in those moments, all that matters is Alice and Peter. And their love story, it's this beacon of light, this reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope.
And just when you think you know where their story is going, Statter throws in a twist that changes everything.
I know. We can't talk about it, obviously. Wouldn't want to spoil it for our listeners. But let's just say nothing is as it seems in Treachery on the Fells. Those little details, the ones you might think are insignificant, yeah, those might be the key to unlocking the entire mystery. It's funny how with every page I thought I had it figured out. The characters, their motives, the whole shebang. But Statter, he's got a knack for keeping you on your toes.
Oh, absolutely. Just when you think you've got it all neatly sorted, he pulls the rug right out from under you.
And that twist we talked about, still can't get over it, changes everything. I mean, everything. Suddenly you're looking back at all the characters, wondering who to trust.
It's that setting, too. Ambleside. Like you said, secrets are practically part of the foundation there.
Hmm?
Makes you realize nothing's as straightforward as it seems.
Speaking of secrets, we got to talk about Joe Turner. Can't say too much, wouldn't be fair to our listeners who haven't read it, but let's just say, that Undertaker's son, he's more than meets the eye.
That's an understatement. 1 minute, he's got this almost charming awkwardness.
Yeah.
The next, well, let's just say Statter doesn't shy away from showing us the darker side of Joe's nature.
Definitely keeps you guessing. And it's not just Joe who goes through these transformations. Alice, our protagonist, she really comes into her own throughout the story.
Oh, for sure. At first, she's carrying so much weight. The farm, the expectations, her past. But you see her change, adapt. She finds this inner strength, this determination to fight for what she believes in, for what she wants her life to be.
She's a fighter, that's for sure. There's this line towards the end really stuck with me. Alice is reflecting on everything, and she says, "Church farm might be in my blood, but I've learned that home isn't a place. It's what you fight for, what you build with your own two hands."
Powerful, isn't it? Speaks volumes about resilience, about how we create our own sense of belonging, even when everything around us feels uncertain.
Makes you think about Peter, too. He's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, the trauma of his past. Yet he still finds it in himself to open his heart to Alice, to believe in love, to fight for a future together.
Their love story, it's not easy, not picture perfect, but it feels real, you know? They face challenges, support each other through thick and thin. It's that shared journey, that understanding that makes their connection so compelling.
And that ending. Statter could have tied everything up with a neat little bow, but he doesn't.
Thank goodness for that. It's not the predictable happily ever after you might expect. It's real, it's raw, it stays with you.
Exactly. It makes you think, keeps those gears turning long after you've closed the book. Which is what a good story should do, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Gets under your skin, makes you question, makes you feel. And this one, Treachery on the Fells, it definitely does that.
It does. So as we wrap up our deep dive, one last thing's been on my mind. Remember how Statter mentions his cousin James Downey about the author? The war hero fought with the French resistance.
I do, yeah. Struck me as a very personal detail to include, almost like a tribute.
Exactly. Makes you wonder, is Treachery on the Fells more than just a romance, more than a mystery? Could it be Statter's way of honoring those who lived through the war, who fought for their lives, their freedom, their loves, amidst all that chaos?
It's a good question. One worth thinking about, that's for sure.
It is. Well, folks, we've taken you deep into Treachery on the Fells, but like with any good story, there's always more to discover within the pages. So if you're looking for a captivating read, something to really sink your teeth into, this one comes highly recommended.
And remember, this whole world of pre-published works out there, hidden gems waiting to be discovered. So keep exploring, keep those minds open, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.